For today's Green Report, we look at the latest science on climate change. Climate change is real, of course, but two new scientific papers out this past week say it's happening a hell of a lot faster and in a more dangerous direction than scientists were even considering as a worst-case scenario just a few years ago. The first paper was published in Nature Geoscience, which points out that the rate at which we're dumping carbon into our atmosphere and the amount of carbon has only one analog in the past 66 million years. That was a period called the PETM, an acronym for the Permian-Eocene thermal maximum, one of the minor but very real eras of mass extinction. We conclude, the authors of the study note, quote, given currently available records, the current man-made carbon release rate is unprecedented during the past 66 million years. And because the carbon release that triggered the PETM, probably from undersea volcanic activity, melting undersea, or permafrost methane into the atmosphere, because that took around 4,000 years to happen back then, and today it's happening in a period of fewer than 200 years, the authors conclude, quote, regarding impacts on ecosystems, the present/future rate of climate change and ocean acidification is too fast for many species to adapt, which is likely to result in widespread future extinctions in marine and terrestrial environments that will substantially exceed those at the PETM. As Chris Mooney writes for the Washington Post about this study, if you dig deep enough into the Earth's climate change archives, you hear about the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, or PETM, and then you get scared. We are throwing carbon into the atmosphere at about 10 times the rate that the planet did back during the PETM time, which kicked off that extinction, which means that there's really no precedent for what is happening or what may happen right now. Up until the past few years, most science around climate change was predicting bad consequences for humans around the year 2100, when most of us alive today are dead. But that wasn't all that compelling, after all. I mean, well, I'll be dead, right? But new climate scientists reported over at arcticnews.blogspot.com indicates that instead of 2100 being the target year for truly life-shaking consequences to appear worldwide, 2026, a decade from now, may be a more realistic target. In part, this is because the Arctic ice sheet is melting so much faster than pretty much anybody had predicted. And once it's gone during the summer, which could happen in as few as 4 years from now, the loss of reflectivity and the fact that heating water uses fewer calories of heat than melting ice does means that the risk of an explosive release of Arctic undersea methane has become a real threat to humanity. Meanwhile, Dr. James Hansen, writing in his blog and over at the Huffington Post, tells us about a new scientific study he'll soon be publishing, suggesting that a relatively modest warming that happened about 110,000 years ago, a warming not that different from today, except that it was more limited than our carbon releases today, produced planet-wide superstorms that moved 1,000-ton boulders around the planet. To make his point, the New York Times, in their article on Hansen's research, includes a photo of one of the boulders. In their article, it's titled, not coincidentally, Scientists Warn of Perilous Climate Shift Within Decades, Not Centuries. The science on this is really starting to get intense and scary. We need a rapid worldwide shift away from fossil fuels, from all forms of carbon fuels. Not even a decade from now, but today. And a carbon tax may be the best way to get there. If we don't get started, we too may go the way of the dinosaurs.